What Valentine's Day disaster have you witnessed while working in a restaurant? Story 1. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant. I once had a couple come in and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl, and I was left to clean the mess. Why the heck did she throw up so much? Some people puke when they're really stressed or distraught, I guess. The girl gets dumped on Valentine's Day and then embarrasses herself by exorcist vomiting in the restaurant. I bet that day still haunts her. Story 2. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement. They wanted champagne, a specific seat, and a bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, "So I read we're celebrating an engagement. Congratulations," followed by confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. She ruined it. Shouldn't the guy have written proposal instead of engagement then? He brought it upon himself. It's a pull-down list of events. Someone should have mentioned something of that nature. But I guess they got lazy, or there was a lack of communication. This moment sucked for the guy and was embarrassing for the server, but I agree that the guy should have been more explicit in his instructions. All it would have taken is adding the word surprise into the details and requesting tactfulness from the staff, but hopefully this is now just a funny memory for all parties involved. Story 3. These two were on a date and the guy went to use the bathroom. The girl just up and leaves after he went to the bathroom. When the guy came back, he sat around for a while before asking his waitress where his date went. She told him that she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. 0 for 2 in one night. Darn. Hey, you miss every shot you don't take. It's unfortunate that the girl didn't have the courtesy to at least let the guy know she wasn't interested before leaving, but at least the guy was able to move on pretty quick, so he has that going for him. Story 4. They came in at lunch the day after, so it was pretty empty, but it was still for a Valentine's Day date. They were both pretty nice at the beginning. The guy asked for a picture and whatnot. As the meal went on, the dude got progressively drunker, and by the time I brought the check out, the woman was gone. When the dude gave me his card, he said, "I'll give you a bit of advice. If you're taking a girl out to break up with her, do it at a McDonald's and not an expensive restaurant." I don't understand why some people think it's a thing to break up at a restaurant. Dump me in private, please. If we have plans to go out, dump me beforehand. It's in the hope that the other person won't make a scene, but it could backfire, because if they do make a scene, it's in a public place and you look like a jerk. Story 5. He proposed and she said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there, stony-faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. Why do people propose in public? Wouldn't it be better to discuss that in private? There's something to be said about declaring your love to the world. It's romantic, but the answer should absolutely already be a known yes, as in the couple has already discussed it. So when the proposal happens, that's the surprise, not the fact that the proposal is happening to begin with. Story 6. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant, including the bar and patio, from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was canceled, or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude, however, kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he'll be seated. He kept saying that he is a regular customer and that his date was going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because of the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50, the guy loses it. He walks up fast to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete crap, because the only copy of the reservations for the night, which is barely half over, is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try to get the book back, but by the time they got out, he had already left the parking lot. 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant, and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 out of the 5 owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man." Did he expect no one to remember him after doing something that memorable? He wasn't lying when he said he was a regular customer. We recognized him before he even stole the book. He was just a serious jerk. This story is even crazier knowing that the guy actually was a regular at the restaurant. I have to wonder if he really thought this strategy would work, or if he was just that desperate. Story 7. This didn't happen in a restaurant, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day, I was working the night shift and this woman came down with a cut above her eye, looking like she just won a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. The woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the cops, which we do immediately. It turned out he had hurt her during an argument, and from what I could tell, this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp, as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk. I got a bottle of Hypnotic and some vodka. The manager got a bottle of Patron. The cherry on top of everything was the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. I'm never one to defend a guy like him, so I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Thanks for telling the wife. My mother has been cheated on and the hotel staff wasn't able to tell her anything. I understand why they're not able to, but thank you for doing that for a stranger. I have to be honest, I only did it because of what he did to the girlfriend, and the wife had the name and credit card number. Also, if he was going to be in holding for several days, I needed the wife to come pick up his stuff. If he was just cheating, I would have stayed out of it for professional reasons. Story 8. I had a Section 1 V-Day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table, and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad that he had to see all the celebrations going on at the other tables. I hope the reason they broke up is because of something that came up while they were having their meal and not because she didn't like the gift he brought her. Can you clarify what you mean by high-class date? It's been a few years, but my memorable impression was that he was an off-the-rack button-up shirt guy, no tie and jeans. She was very polished, great makeup, thoughtful attention to dress. I remember the vibe being wrong from the start. It's just something you pick up from working in the service industry, I guess. Story 9. This story was relayed to me by a close friend. An older woman, probably in her upper 90s, was with her teenage grandson at a semi-classy restaurant. She was dressed to the nines, and the grandson was in a nice button-up and dress slacks, and they got seated at their table. The grandson placed a framed photo of what my friend assumed was the boy's grandfather and husband of the older woman. They found out it would have been their 70th wedding anniversary, but he had passed suddenly but peacefully a few months back. The grandfather had always wanted to take her to a nice restaurant, but never had the time or money to do it. So the grandson saved up his pay from the last couple of months and even got some donations from other relatives and took her to the restaurant. They ate dinner. Remembering all the good times with the man, they had my friend take a picture, and she did. They tipped my friend very well. By chance, my friend ran into the young man some weeks later to find out that the grandmother passed away a few days after that night, peacefully in her sleep and holding a photo of her beloved husband. He was so happy he was able to make that night special for her. He said it was the only day he saw her smile since his grandfather passed away. He got the picture they took from the restaurant, printed it in a wallet size, and carried it around with him in his wallet. After reading the rest of this thread, I needed that sad smile. So sweet. I know this story wasn't a disaster, but I had to include it as a heartwarming break from the sadness and cringe of the other stories. Story 10. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he handed my wife the roses, mumbled something and walked out. Poor guy. Story 11. A guy proposed to his girlfriend and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw his hands momentarily up in exasperation, but I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant, arms straight up Kermit the Frog style. I'd like to believe the Kermit the Frog one. Story 12. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward, my first job as a waitress. A guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons, and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes, he drops to one knee and gives a speech about his love for her. He asks, she says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert, and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I have had to witness alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free because he felt that bad for him. I cringed inside almost every time I saw him after that. The most messed up, I was working as a duty manager and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation at a table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough, with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point, I had already fixed the till, but was unable to step away from this car crash. It turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and that she could send someone to collect her things, as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted. He just calmly went, "Screw this," and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye. I just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest, I was managing a hotel's room service, where there was a Valentine's Day package that included getting each course of this special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start doing it. I had to help with deliveries because reception messed up the bookings, so I had the privilege of seeing people answer the door naked. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the door in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of their meal from the restaurant. From that first story, she put the ring in her bag? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And finished her dessert, ice cold. Story 13. An old man proposed to an old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped, fell, and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up. We had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive the woman's teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup and left them on the table in the confusion. As a server, I love this thread because you know every one of these stories is true. My manager has had to do some weird stuff and drive some places for customers. Poor old man. I hope this lady at least said yes. Story 14. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally, I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish," then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her, but it was that look of "we've been dating for a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me" that really did it for me. That reminds me of when my parents got me a huge strawberry-filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. So, did they have a life insurance policy on you or something? 25 is the last year a lot of insurance plans cover for your kids. I'm sure that's just a coincidence though. Story 15. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for the attention of the surrounding strangers. He then got down on one knee with a silver band in hand and asked his girlfriend/date to accept his promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. Did she accept the promise ring? Oh, heck no. They went outside to talk and she came back in to settle the bill without him. Wow, that must have been an awkward situation for everyone involved. I don't know why someone would make an announcement to an entire dining room full of strangers and get down on one knee just to present a promise ring. I wonder what sort of grand gesture he'd planned for an actual marriage proposal. Story 16. I was the manager of a wings and pizza place with a full bar. Definitely not the kind of place you'd take someone for a romantic Valentine's Day dinner, but it was still busy because some people aren't very tasteful. We had a guy who had called ahead and asked if we could put a ring in a dessert for him, and of course we obliged. He dropped the ring off the day ahead and I put it in a safe in our office to keep it secure. Fast forward to Valentine's Day, the couple shows up and they're so obviously in love that she didn't seem to notice or care about the fact that he had brought her to a middle-of-the-road place with a sports bar atmosphere on the most romantic day of the year. They ordered champagne, well, the local winery's best sparkling white, entrees, and it was almost time for dessert. I had used my chef skills to whip up a special chocolate strawberry tart that wasn't on the menu, just for this occasion, because why not try to make their night at least a little fancy? I went to the safe to get the ring, and it wasn't there. I was freaking out big time. I asked everyone if they knew what the heck had happened to it. My assistant manager on site had no idea, so I called my other assistant, who also had the safe code, and they didn't know either. Finally, my bar manager mentioned that one of the owners had been in earlier and spent a little time in the office, so at my wit's end, I called the owner. It turns out that he had seen the ring in the safe and thought it was something a customer had left behind. Figuring that he had come into an extremely lucky situation, he decided, like the scumbag he was, that he'd take it for himself and save money on a gift for his wife on Valentine's Day. So I asked the server and bar manager to help stall the couple. The server told them that we were going to do something special for their big date and to hold tight. I ran out, hopped in my car, and rushed to get the ring from the owner's house, because he was, as I mentioned, a scumbag and didn't want to be bothered with bringing the ring to the restaurant himself. The bar manager went over to the table and did some complicated tableside cocktail mix that had a bunch of flair bartending tricks, and ended with a flaming shot that once dropped into the rest made it smoke. I was really disappointed when I heard about all of this because I would have loved to see it instead of breaking a ton of traffic laws on my quest to get the ring. Finally, I rushed back in after about 15 minutes of being on the brink of a heart attack, placed the ring on the dessert, and had their server take it out. At that point, just about the entire staff was watching the table, and when we saw the look on her face, my heart finally started beating again. She said yes, and I started looking for someone else to work for the very next day. So in your boss's mind, somebody would actually leave an engagement ring in a restaurant and then just never come back for it? Or was he outright just stealing and wouldn't have cared either way? Regardless, you're a good dude. I don't think he had a plan, other than to tell someone that we never found anything. He was a real piece of work. Story 17. In college, I waited tables, and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner, the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head and took off her ring, and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me $100. You gotta think that your wife might think something is up when you're busy on Valentine's Day. Yeah, this guy doesn't seem to be the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Story 17. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open-concept floor plan, booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant, and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines, came in shortly after we opened and were seated at a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that, for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they were done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face. He said he thought he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who was embarrassed for him, didn't have anything with her, because her dress had no pockets, and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in, looking pale as a ghost. He had left his wallet at home, and asked if he could call back later with payment info. My general manager won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort so he can leave. So the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet, while the woman waits with her hair done and red lipstick in her pretty dress in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day, with no traffic, which never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were all so embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks, sauce and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I have ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check, tipped like 30%, and they left. It was pretty obvious that it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. That's why you always do the triple pocket tap. That's why you play your pockets like frickin' bongos. Story 18. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant, and Valentine's Day was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off, and we just have to celebrate the day or the weekend after. Nope, he got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out, come to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day, and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again, ever. If he had surprised you at work by bringing a couple friends that didn't have dates for dinner so that he could still see you on Valentine's Day, he'd have earned 1,000,000 points. But nope, not only did he get mad over something stupid, he blew it with 2 women at once. Honestly, I'm kind of impressed. That's an insane level of confidence. Totally. When I first saw him getting seated by the hostess, I thought he was coming to surprise me, and I thought he was so sweet. Then the awful reality slowly dawned on me. My coworkers were just as livid once they realized what was going on. It's understandable that he was disappointed you couldn't spend Valentine's Day together, but it's all kinds of messed up to take it out on you, or to try to make you jealous by bringing someone else to your workplace. It's good that you recognized this as a red flag and decided not to date him anymore. Story 19. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing, and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years, whom she just discovered had been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. What happened to the Tinder date girl while all this was going on? Did she leave before he got back? Stick around to confirm the story, or what? She approached, outed the guy, gave evidence when asked, and gave the woman her phone number as a resource. The man came back at the tail end of the conversation. She didn't acknowledge his existence. She just kept her attention and words on the girlfriend, said what she wanted to, and booked it the heck out of there while he was panicking and trying to reduce the damage. From what I could observe or overhear, he wasn't making excuses. He owned up and just wanted to get out of the public eye. It was sad because on top of that nightmare of a situation, she was also very drunk. It was disturbingly sad. The manager got involved since it was such a scene, and he carried his sobbing GF out. Story 20. I was working at a corporate sports bar that specialized in chicken wings. V-Day, like most days, was insanely busy. As the evening winds down, someone calls in saying they're a professional food critic and demands to speak to the manager. After a 15-minute call, the manager tells us the critic rated us a B- and said the food was good, but the service sucked. He said he would leave that last part out of his review if we comped his meal and gave him vouchers for free meals in the future, but he refused over and over to say where he worked. Confused, the manager talked to the server, who confirmed that the guy ate alone, ran her around ragged while shamelessly hitting on her, and left 0 tip, instead writing his phone number on the tip line. Thirsty jerk wanted free food because the server didn't call him immediately for a date. Story 21. A few years ago, I had finished my shift at a pub I was working at and sat at the bar with a drink. There were still a few couples sitting in the restaurant, but the boss let me clock off early. I had a pint before leaving, and at a table nearby, it sounded like a proposal was about to happen. A few people went quiet listening in, then it happened. Guy: Hannah, will you marry me? He was kneeled down in front of his girlfriend with her sitting down. Girl: Hannah? Who the heck is Hannah? She yelled, threw her drink at him, and then walked out. The guy paid and walked out, looking very red. I don't get how you forget the woman's name that you're in front of. Maybe he was sleeping with twins? I'm not very good with names either, but you'd think that you would know the name of the person you're asking to spend the rest of your life with. Maybe the stress of the moment got to him. Story 22. I was hosting at a really busy brunch, and Valentine's Day was one of our busiest days. We had a full waitlist with tons of people in the lobby when this dude walked in with a huge teddy bear and a bouquet of roses. He said he wanted to drop them off for my coworker, so I let her know he was there, but understandably she was running around, so it took a bit. While waiting, a bunch of folks waiting for tables complimented him on how sweet he was to do that for his girlfriend and how jealous they were. It was kind of cute. When my coworker was finally able to come up front, there were a lot of awes and such. Again, we were slammed, so she ran back after taking the items, and it was back to work for all of us. When it died down, I asked her how long she had been dating her boyfriend, and she replied, "Oh, he's not my boyfriend. He was the salesman where I bought my car, and I think he got my workplace from the paperwork." That was pretty freaking disturbing. Oh no, that's awful. I hope she called the dealership the next day and let them know that one of their salespeople was using someone's personal info that way. Creep. Here's the messed up thing. She actually liked him and didn't see anything wrong with what he did. Story 23. A couple came into my hibachi restaurant since it was the fanciest place in town. A young woman was all decked out in a spangly light blue satin cocktail gown. He was in a suit and tie. They wanted to sit at the grill for a show, but still ordered a ton of sushi and drinks. So their section of table was extremely full of dishes. I'm talking multiple mixed drinks and waters for both of them, soup and salad bowls for both of them, appetizer plates, sushi plates, soy sauce trays, and their entree plates. The hibachi seats 12, and it's basically a bar ledge around the grill for a table. We were slammed, so there was no extra room. I barely managed to talk to them into letting me take the empty dishes as they finished with them, but it hardly helped. The chef starts his show, and the dude is super into it, demanding to be included, so the chef flicks a shrimp at him. In his effort to show off and catch it in his mouth, he managed to miss it completely and crashes into the table, sending food, drinks, and a full bottle of soy sauce right onto his date's pale blue satin-covered lap and everywhere else. It was a complete crap show. She was screaming and crying. The other couples that had their meals ruined were all upset. The man was blaming me. The busboys and I were just trying to clean up and salvage what we could of the service. It was awful. Reading this brings me physical pain. And as if it weren't bad enough, we were a pretty small restaurant. We had 135 seats total in one open rectangular room. We were completely full and on a 45-minute wait for regular tables, longer for the hibachi grills. There were about 50 people milling around up front by the bar and hostess stand, waiting for seating, plus all 135 seated customers and all the staff. When he kicked off that disaster, he did it in clear view of about 200 people, in a town so small that basically everyone knows each other. I can't even imagine how long it took for him to stop hearing about it. Story 24. This happened to my poor coworker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time, ate a lot of food, drank a lot of wine, and got along really well with my coworker, who was their server. About 2 months later, they came back in and request my coworker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them, the guy introduces his wife to him, and my coworker mentions something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. The wife gets up and leaves, and the guy just lowers his head. It turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day, but my coworker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so he didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. The guy was a POS for cheating, obviously, but also what an idiot to request the server he had while with the other woman. The dude took a test drive with the mistress and decided the server was good enough for the wife. I wonder if the man was just hoping for tactfulness from the server, or if he was really just that dumb. Either way, I'm glad the wife found out he was cheating. Thanks for watching and/or listening all the way to the end. If you have a story similar to these, please leave it in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. If you enjoyed hearing these stories, please leave a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.